failed leadership challenge. Politicians make their case to iwi leaders, and the Waitangi Tribunal is calling the government's treaty clause review damaging and a significant breach. Political drama has been filling people's news feeds like an annoying social media ad. It's hard to keep up. However, join us to help hopefully catch you up. Ko Mani Tanapa hau. Anyway, before we get into it, whatitiri te wake. How are you? What a week it has been.
It's been a big week. It's actually been a big couple of weeks since the last time we chatted on these chairs. Me te aha, ko peke rawatu, makariri rawatu mai te hiku o te ika, ki te upoko, ki te waipounamu. It's been freezing. But yeah, as you said, lots of drama. So while it's cold outside, in that whareparemata, wera.
Oh yes, those winds are swirling.
Absolutely. And our kohautu, dear, how are you? Kei te pēhea?
Ai, tēnā koe, it is like a social media ad, except it's like they've got it on boost and they just keep boosting it, eh? Hore kau mutu, haere tonu ana e rā pahu, eh? Kau patu mai, ka anini te mātinga I te nui o ngā kōrero e whiwhi haere ana. Here we're well. Hey, we're here, we're well.
We have to be.
Hey, we must. Ioi mihana kia kaurua.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Well, let's get into it, eh? There's a lot to cover. And while everyone is thinking about their whakatau pōti on November 7th, Christopher Luxon was worried about whether or not he would have the votes within his own team, or even be there on election night, that is. Here's a clip from his 75-second deja coup stand-up yesterday.
There was a confidence vote in my leadership this morning at our caucus meeting, and I have the full support of our caucus. And our caucus is united and it is determined to win this election.
Well, it was, going back in time. This was the second leadership attempt, or the second kind of emergency caucus meeting to have this discussion and have a vote of confidence in 4 months. The last one was in April. There was speculation over the weekend around, whether or not there was going to be, there was kōhimuhimu happening within the party that they were not happy with their leader. And it was all kind of stemmed from something that Luxon said on News Talk ZB around the MMP referendum, and saying that he would hold one after if he won the next election without any consultation with his caucus. And that kind of was one of the last straws of the camel's, the last straw, if you will, in terms of making the caucus unhappy. So, man, yesterday, everyone had their popcorn out though, ne?
Yes, me pehara e whakaputa I etahi kōrero e hāngai ana ki tēnei take. From what I saw in that stand-up, it was, it was just fascinating. It was mind-blowing. As you mentioned, having had this conversation, as Kairi Puata, 3 months ago, 4 months ago? 4 months ago. And then for, the press gallery and the cameras to then go back into the banquet hall to repeat to do it all again was just fascinating. But one of the key points I wanted to just touch on was, he kept saying that we're a united team, we're united, but from what I could see behind, I think that's one of the big talking points is te āhua o te tinanai. I was a little bit like, deer in lights, some of them. And ka aroha hoki ki te rāhuatanga, but that's just one of my observations.
Well, because there was so much, and it is, all of it is speculation. There was so much speculation to be had because every reporter has their different sources and we're all told different things. And, at one point it was meant to be Erica Stanford as the leader, Mark Mitchell as the deputy, and Chris Bishop as the financeman. This is what we were hearing. And then there was, Bish trying to take leadership and all those sorts of things. But then the fall guy essentially was Chris Pink. And he was the one who did make the direct challenge to Luxon and to the caucus whether or not to take the leadership. And he was punished for that, stripped of his ministerial portfolio that was announced a few hours after the stand-up. And then a few hours later, he he was saying he was resigning from politics.
I'd love to just cross over here, please.
Do you know what? I watched the 75 seconds. Mātakitaki atu a hau I rātou. Kamutu, tiro atu kia Chris Bishop, tiro atu kia Erica Ma, kite anu te kanohi ko he ngā rā e pēnei ana. It was fascinating. Kamutu I toia rāua kia noho kiaia, kia tū ki ana taha. And I was just thought, how remarkable. Look at you. They just looked so unimpressed.
Well, yes, and when we were waiting, for them to come out, and so the meeting, there was a 3-hour meeting in the caucus, the emergency caucus room, and you're not allowed to, you have to wait on the tiles, and then we all got a message in the press gallery group chat, and like 12:35, banquet hall, the PM is holding a stand-up koe nā nake. And then I was like, oh, there's no pronoun, we don't know, you know. I was like, is there a new PM? And everyone, you know, we're kind of trying to get to the banquet hall. And we got there and then we saw them all come out. And oh my God, you could cut the tension and you could in the room with a knife a little bit. But yeah, so fascinating in terms of what do you think this means for the election?
The election moving forward. I mean, you know, every day is crucial to get your message out there. But now for the next couple of weeks, they're going to have to be, you know, Operation Whakapaipai Tahi Tahi Te Whare. Just so that they can...
Te marae.
Tahi Tahi Te marae. And also for, you know, a party that loves to pride themselves on Christian values, there's got to be a lot of e tō mātou awe marias happening, you know, to whakatika i a rātou kako ke whakamua.
And I think, you know, going forward, Luxon will have to be a bit more careful about the words he uses and the statements that he makes in the media, and yeah, be on his best behaviour. But yeah, let's go to other Māori politics. And it does seem like a while ago, but since 2 weeks ago, we'll wind it back to the iwi chairs, which you know was 2 weeks ago, but have been seeing the content from Something for the People of politicians being drilled by iwi leaders. And here's a mashup of some of their responses.
Is being the Prime Minister somewhere?
Is that something that... Is that on the plan?
Anybody can be the Prime Minister. Have a look at that. Look, anybody can be the Prime Minister. I've never seen a collection of useless people being the Prime Minister.
I think one of the things we have to get out of our heads is all this kotahitanga nonsense. All right? We're under attack as a people.
And all of a sudden they're saying, oh, yeah, but you haven't got the right quantum of blood. You see that? I've heard these people say that. Oh, yes, you have. You've heard Scribble say that to me. You haven't got the right quantum of blood.
Will you commit to the co-development of a framework with us, iwi nations, around constitutional reform to honour Te Tiriti in accordance with the framework of Mātiki Mai?
Probably not.
Ka whai.
Love him or hate him, I think he had that crowd in the palm of his hand, old Papa Winston. But, you know, the whole Scribbles thing, this is on the back, fresh off the back of the comments that he said in the House about the Green MP. I just think it's just so tiresome, so boring. Papa Winnie, kia kaha koe.
And what he always, you know, talks about anytime he is in these, you know, in these spaces or challenged around any Māori issues, he always talks about Aipiranga Ngata, he always talks about Dame Whenekupa and how he was the one who was in the room with her and he was the one that got funding through Muldoon for kohanga reo, and talks about Apirana and the things around, you know, talking about unity and those sorts of things. But I mean, and that's kind of, you know, his argument, but I'm like, that's many years ago. You know, Winston, you know, things are changing, things are evolving. But again, like you say, off the back of the comment around telling Lawrence Sunan, Green MP, to go back to his own country. And then as a result, we've seen Labour rule New Zealand first out in the next election, that was one of the catalysts in order when that happened.
I mean, one good thing about him, though, is he shows up, and that's cool. You know, kua kanohi ki te I mua I te aroaronga upoko o ngā iwi puta noa I te motu. Me te aha, I think there was only one political party, the ACT Party, that didn't actually show up. So, you know, love him or hate him, he shows up, he has those conversations, whether you like them or not.
What did you think of Labour's comments?
Well, first of all, shout out to Arataua, Something
Kia ora.
People.
Yeah, kia ora.
For providing the content. E mihi ana kia rātou. Kamutu, I want to say about Matua Wenitana. I absolutely believe that if he wasn't a Māori, he would have been Prime Minister by now. He would have already had a term as Prime Minister. I think that's, I think his track record in Parliament has probably shown that it's that. Also, there was I'm just going to stick on Winnie for a little bit longer. But if anyone's watched the clip, it's actually quite interesting. He's got this room. He's held this room, and half of the room kata pai ana, puka kata ana. And e rātu e meana, ko horeko e whakai. E rangi te mutunga iho I kitea, there's some of the things that he says probably resonates with a lot of Māori. And I roto I te rumara, mai ngā tuia right at the end, because they took note that, hey, there's probably some New Zealand First supporters in here. And so Winston says, oh, just one thing before I go. It's a secret ballot. No one will know. Kata pai te whare. And, you know, like he's got this charisma that is kind of unmatched. As for Willie and Chris Hipkins, I thought that Chris Hipkins did lay out a few things in their interview that he was going to repeal. We know that the Labour Party has made commitments in turning over some of the education training changes that this government's is pushing through. And so there were some things there that definitely resonated with Māori. And in terms of Willie saying, no, we probably won't, Chris Hipkins said it's probably worth a conversation, but a national one.
And also who showed up to iwi chairs was the National Party, Tama Potaka and Nicola Willis, not the Prime Minister. And, you know, they spoke really candidly about, we did damage relationships through the Treaty Principles Bill, and we'll talk later around the treaty clause review and how that's been described as being, that's pretty much Treaty Principles in South. But speaking of the National Party, over the weekend, before the leadership drama and the attempted coups, they announced their list at the weekend, and while you'll find a few of the party's speculative coup leaders quite high on the list, what you won't find in the top 10 is a single Māori. Anyway, Speaker Jerry Brownlee made the top 10, and when reporters asked why that was, this is what Christopher Luxon had to say.
Well, it's just recognising he's one of our great kamatuas in our party. I mean, like he's been in Parliament now for 30 years.
Kaumātua Jerry, eh?
Kaumātua māngai o te whare.
Te manga o te whare, hei kaumātua mo te pāti nā hina rā kawatu. Anga, rongo atu hau I tērā kōrero, mai ngā tau ki taku watari. Hey, rewind that, did he really say that? Hey, you won't find a Māori here, but you will find a kaumātua.
Yeah. And it was before, and I think the timeline is important, because when we were at the stand-up, he said that kaumātua remark, because I was trying to get my question in, and he said the kaumātua remark and looked at me, and then he goes, Mani, to ask my question, and I was like, it was a little bit like, oh, it was a little bit by the kaumātua use. I go, hey, a few months ago when you did your reshuffle, we talked about how there was a real lack of Māori and Pacific representation, so why are there no Māori in your top 10? And then he went on to say, oh, well, Tama Potaka is in the top 11, and he's 11, and James Meagher in the top 20. He's talked about Dale Stevens, who's a Christchurch Central candidate. However, a lot of them probably won't get in. He also mentioned the Hauauru candidate, who's at number 56, saying that they're promising and good representation.
I mean, representation, this is where it's key and it's really important is, communities need to see themselves reflected in the people who occupy those positions of power. And so for a single Māori not to be in the top 10, I think, as a Māori, it's like, oh, ding, 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 alarm bells. But given the decisions and the policy that the national government, the national-led government has made, like around Te Ao Māori, e whakataina ana I Te Reo, e rā momo āhuatanga, hea te hua o te Māori whaiwahi atu ki te tekau.
Because looking at previous candidate lists and previous elections, obviously we had, Simon Bridges, he Māori, Paula Bennett, he Māori, who were definitely in that top 10. So, like you say, does it have weight?
I don't know, with all of these people jumping in and, all the coups and everything going on, we might find a Māori after the election in their top 10, because I imagine they'd have to be moving some seats around. So maybe Tama Potaka might go from 11 to somewhere else.
Might get a little
bump up,
a little maybe. Who knows?
Who knows? It's a bit of bumper cars in there at the moment.
Okay, moving right along here to whānau. How are we going? We're all good? Health and safety.
Health and safety has been...
Well-being
Take a breath.
Haroto. Ki waho.
Ki waho. It's only Thursday.
Okay. Attempts to raweke I te tiriti saw streets across Aotearoa filled with Māori and tangata whenua alike. The government has another bill, the Treaty Principles Reform, that critics say is worse than its predecessor, the Treaty Principles Bill.
My view is clarity and certainty about our obligations to each other as Crown, iwi, but also other people that interact with any bits of legislation is really important.
The Tribunal was pretty scathing about how much this has damaged relationships with iwi Māori and with iwi leaders especially. I mean, you have an opportunity here to just abandon it after the election if you were to get in. Why not take that offer on the table?
Well, because it is perfectly acceptable and legitimate for every government to ask ourselves what does the Treaty o Waitangi mean in the context of a modern democracy today?
And as I was saying before, at iwi leaders, they were challenged on Nicola Willis mentioned the Treaty Principles Bill and the damage that had created. And again, this treaty clause review has been described as that in stealth because of the 19 pieces of legislation that they're looking to review, and how damaging that will be. And that's what the tribunal found. And as journalists, we know that when things are released on a Friday, they tend to get lost in the news cycle. And so the tribunal report was released not Friday just gone, the one before, and it was hundreds of pages that was very extensive, which found how damaging this particular clause review would be and has been to the Crown Māori relationship. But again, this goes back to the weight of the tribunal. The recommendations are not binding, and the government's just going to go on with it, but it's definitely not going to go to the House before the election.
Just for any of our whānau who are wondering what the heck is it? What is the review? Can you tell us what that is?
So essentially this was born out of the education review that was in front of the tribunal when they were taking the treaty out of the boards, the obligation for school boards to have to the treaty. And then what came out of that was this treaty review, which was actually a New Zealand First Coalition agreement. And so the government they did the review and what legislation they wanted to change or take the treaty out or weaken the obligations within particular different parts of legislation. So like education, transport, many other areas. And so this was kind of put through, there wasn't much transparency done, and so the iwi chairs specifically, they had been writing and wanting to be consulted, and before it kind of started, when it was broken in the story, that started to come out, what had happened is that the iwi chairs he was saying that he was, Paul Goldsmith, the treaty negotiator, or Justice Minister with this pōtai on, was trying to say that he was consulting with them, but he wasn't, essentially, and so then that's how it kind of blew up, and a lot of the allegations were made within the media around kind of, completely filtering, pretty much diluting, treaty obligations within 19 pieces of legislation.
Ka aroha hoki ki tēnei āhuatanga me te mōhio, te ropu whakamana I te tiriti o Waitangi, e hia kēnei ngā ripuata kua puta I a rātou me te kiake, kei te tātā, kei te tāmi tonu te kāwanatanga I ngā āhuatanga, ngā mōtika o te Māori, and ka ahu pēhea. Ko tāku pēr, ko tētahi o ngā kauhanga nui pēr I roto I tēnei, ka whaiwahi atu te Māori, ki te kite atu I ngā hua kua puta, me te utonu pēr ki era hei a tā pei, kia anga, kia koke, whakamunga.
Ka matu tētahi mea I kaha kite ana I roto I tēnei nohoanga, tēnei term nei, te kaha hoki atu o te Māori ki te Tribunal, ki te kōrero I nei take, I te mea e pērā ana, e kia ana ka kōrero ki te Māori, e kōrero ana ki te Māori, e rangi e kore e pērā ana, ngā whakawhitinga, nā reira ko te are e whāia ana e tēnā, te toko maha nei, ka haere atu ki te Tribunal, which is an important function for the tribunal, for a place to hear these grievances, but also it really goes to show that there's for Māori issues, there's hardly any pathways to be able to raise these issues and to be able to have something to say, e he ana tēnei. E he ana tēnei.
And what we've seen time and time again, though, with the amount of urgent inquiries that we've seen in the last 3 years with the Waitangi Tribunal, is that the government has repeatedly ignored the recommendations. The Prime Minister and as we saw Goldsmith, just didn't really take it into consideration at all. They were like, oh, we're aware of them, we haven't read it, but we think that we're doing the right thing. When the tribunal was clearly saying that this is damaging Māori Crown relationships, not necessarily, maybe there does need to be a review of how the treaty is, consistent across legislation, but the process in which it's been done has been very little consultation. So, and just quickly, the Te Pāti Māori put a policy out last week that kind of got lost in all the noise, that they would aim to make the Waitangi Tribunal recommendations binding if they were in government after the election. Speaking of, we are less than 90 days out from the election, and parties are out hoping to snag the attention of Māori voters in the latest very poll. And so in that poll, what we saw was that there was revealed, it was on One News last night, revealed a left bloc could form a governing coalition with the Opportunity Party, who notably got 8%. And so on those numbers, they could see 9 MPs maybe go through to Parliament. So what are our thoughts on the Opportunity Parties? They're known as top, but they've kind of rebranded to be OP.
Op on top?
Op on top.
Well, she's obviously done the media rounds. Kua kaha no te wahine rā, ko pēha te whakahine?
Kiulei wā.
Kiulei, ki te kōrero atu ki te ao pāpāho. Koera pēr te tahi o ngā huatanga e whiu atu ana ki aia. They're like, oh, look at her, she's, you know, the media are all latching on and actually creating the phenomenon and like getting behind them and driving it, which I just, you know, don't agree. Anyway, some of my whānau, you know, e tahi o ngā whānau e kei te are o rātou taringa ki ngā kōrero e puta mai ana i tērā pāti. Me taku harikoa, I te mea e ata ako ana I ngā momo āhuatanga o ngā kaupapa here o tēnā pāti, o tēnā pāti, o tēnā pāti. So 8%, 9 members, that's pretty big.
I mean, I'm hearing a lot of whānau talk about Opportunity Party because a lot of people, you know, we're talking to, they don't know who they're going to vote for. The undecided vote is quite significant at the moment. And, you know, what we were walking up the terrace the other day, you know, getting our lunch and the terrace talks. There were a few people we came into the terrace, were coming in, having a chat to. He Māori saying, oh no, yep, I'm looking at becoming a member of the Opportunity Party. So,
he Māori, he Ngāti Pro.
yes, sorry, we won't name. But, you know, and I think also they have a couple of Māori in their top 10 as well. In Skipper Ngata, who they've got another Waiariki candidate, which we'll talk about soon, and they'll be releasing their treaty policy in the coming weeks as well, which will be really, really interesting. And I think also notably on those poll numbers, it's also after national ruling out, working with the Opportunity Party.
Yeah, I mean, and because e hanga noho ana rātou ki Wainganui. You know, e hari te mea he rewhe, he raiti, he ahatu. E rangi e noho ana rātou ki Wainganui. Nā reira, pēnā ka eke rātou ki e rata tauranga a te tuawhitu o Noema. Ka kore pia tātou e mōhio ka pēhia te hanga mai o te kāwanatanga. You know, they could go either way because they're e kite ana I o rātou ringaringa e toro ana, e pērā ana, ne, hari te mea e whirinaki ana ki tētahi tahe nahi nei. E rangi kamutu, it just makes it very interesting because, I mean, while some people probably see the Opportunity Party as a real alternative for them if they're looking around at politics right now and thinking, hey, geez, I'm over the social media ad kind of tanga of politics and I just want you guys to calm down. And so I'm sure that there's plenty of voters that are going to be looking for keihia te mauri tau. Tērā pia, ka whai I tērā ara I roto mai I ngā pāti ririki nei.
E mohi ana tātou I etahi wā, pēnā ka noho taiapa te tangata e ka mamai te kōtore. So, tāria te waka ki te kāhu pēhea rātou.
Yeah. Oh, should we just go through those polls? Sorry, get my notebook. Yes. This is my poll numbers.
Hop off, political nerd.
Zoom out.
In the most loving way.
I'm going to lean into it, okay?
Nākou te whera ki te iwi.
No, but on those written poll numbers, you know, like I said, if we're with the Opportunity Party, we could see a left bloc government. So Labour was on 30%, Nats on 29%, Greens down just one on 12%, and ACT up on 9%, and New Zealand First on that 8% number as well of the Opportunity Party, and also Te Pāti Māori down to 1%. So.
I mean, the fascinating thing, just quickly about that poll, is it came out yesterday, on the day that the big raru happened. So it'll be interesting. I don't know who's next to put out a poll.
Well, yeah, no, I think it was intentional. They did an early publication, so it was a shorter window between 8th and 11th of August, because they released in the day when they were in their caucus meeting the Prime Minister, you know, numbers for Luxon, which had gone down to 17%.
Love that mōhutanga.
Koina te
Speaking of, the debates about the Māori seats are also heating up with candidates lining up to take that oh so precious Māori vote. Tēnā kia titiroa ki tātou ki ngā rohe pōti o Aotearoa.
Ai, ki te tai tokero.
Oh, okay.
Kia ora, kia ora te whānau. Ko ko Maria Meno, Kapakingi, e noho ana, I tērā tūru I tēnei wā, mō te Pāti o te Tai Tokerau, Willow Jean Prime, kua noho ke I roto I te tūru o Northland, I te tahi wairangi, kua haere atu ia, kua whakawhiti atu ki te taha Māori, mō te Pāti Reipa, Huhana Linden, hu tahi anō ia ka kua rewa I te timatanga o tana haerenga I roto I ngā kōwhiringa, me te Green Policy I puta I reira I whakapara. Kamatu Apirahama Edwards, mō te Pāti Māori.
Ki tāmaki makaurau, kaore kore, he pakanga nui te haere ake, engari ko te tangata nāna te tūru, ko Orini Kaipara, te me mō te Pāti Māori, Kieran Leone, he kaitono hou mō tēnei tūru, mō te Pāti Reipa, kamutu Florence Te Ohaere mō te Pāti Kākāriki.
And going through Hauraki Waikato, we've got Hana Rāwhiti Maipi Clark for Te Pāti Māori, and Kingi Kiriona for Labour, who's quite high on the list for Labour.
Ko Rawiri Waititi, te kainoho I te tūru o Waiariki tēnei wā, mō te Pāti Māori, e tono ana a Tanya Waikato, mō te Pāti Kākāriki, Tony Boynton, hare tēnei tana te ringa tuatahi, kua ngana ke ia ki te tui tēnei tūru, mō te Pāti Reipa. Kamutu, opportunity, pāpā whare wera, kua tūtana ringa I roto I tēnei tūru.
Haere atu ana ki Ika roa Rāwhiti, ko Hayley Maxwell tērā, te kaitono mō te Pāti Māori. We've got Kusha Tangaire Manuel for the Labour Party and former Te Pāti Māori member, Heather Te Au Skipworth, e whai atu ana I te tūru mō ngā kākāriki.
And making our way over to Te Tai Hauauru. It's sunny. And
Feels like Air New Zealand.
Your exits, no. Ranga kai tono ki reira, Te Pāti Māori Zibi Ngāri Wapaka for Reipa, Te Puoho Kātine. And for National, who got a bit of airtime in the weekend from the leader, Luxon, is Coral Raukawa.
Kia ora.
Te Māori, te kotahi, e tono ana no te Pāti Ngā Hinara mō te tahi o ngā tūru Māori.
We do hear that. Oh, sorry. Kaire tonu.
Heoi, ki roto I te taitonga, Tākuta Ferris, te tangata I noho ana I roto I tēnei tūranga I tēnei wā. Heoi, kua wehe atu I te Pāti Māori, he independent I aene, ko Mananui Ramsden, mo te Pāti Reipa, Lisa Te Morenga, mo te Pāti Kākāriki, kamatu Lisa Marie Murch, mo te Pāti Māori. Nā reira koia ko ngā kaitono, mō ngā tūru. Me te mea nei, e kite ana he taumata teitei. Kei wānganui a rātou. He taumata teitei, he pai te kite I ngā pukenga. You know, that's a pretty decent lineup. Whānau have... there's some decent choices.
Yeah, and I think though, and I feel like maybe we're sick of hearing it, feeling like a broken record with a lot of kind of commentary around strategic voting, eh? And you can see though by that lineup how for Te Pāti Māori, why that would be a strategy in order to kind of get those other parties or those other MPs within the other parties into the House. Well, if they could get their Te Pāti Māori candidates in, but when's the deadline for the candidate? To cut off? Because, we never know, there could be some more.
There is a cut-off date. Ko te tuawaru o Oketopa, noon. So, te Poupoutanga o te rā on the 8th of October is the last day that candidates can put in their nominations to the Electoral Commission.
Tēnā koe I rā kōrero. Ki kaupapa ki atu, you would have seen in the headlines also MSD's 2026 report that found 25% of Māori children are living in material hardship and 12% in severe hardship, well above the national average.
We know a lot of our families are really struggling, even if they're both working parents. In those lower earning families, it's a huge percentage of what they have available goes to just keeping the power and the roof over their heads. Policies that are being made from various governments, they make choices on what they're going to invest in and what they're going to prioritise, and the policies that have been made in the last few years don't prioritise children's well-being.
And so just to remind the whānau, this report came out on the back of the report from Stats NZ that came out in February that pretty much told the same story, if not the stats were almost identical. Me te mohi ana hoki, me he mea ka titiro whakamuri ki te ringa tuatahi I kora mātou e pāna ki ngā mōrehu, survivors of state abuse. This kaupapa is one of those kaupapa that just doesn't sit squarely with the current government, but it touches past governments and future governments. Nō reira, he take nui tēnei, e tika ana kia ata kōrero hia, ne?
Kamatu, like in all of the noise that's happening in politics right now, whether it's trying to get a new leader, or trying to become the next Prime Minister or whatever, at the end of the day, there's still 1 in 4 Māori children that don't know whether or not they're going to have a kai, that don't have who that might need a warm jacket. Like, this is a lived reality, and te nui o te hoi hoi e putana I te whare paremata I etahi wā ka whakaro ake ahia, whakaro ake koe ki te tangata, ki te tamaiti. And at some point we've got to see some policy and some legislation that's going to help them.
E te iwi, kua tō te rā, ki runga I tēnei te renga. E mihi atu ana kia koutou, tēnā koutou I whakalongo mai ki tēnei te renga. Come back in 2 weeks, that's the good news. Kia kite ai tātou ko wai I eke, ko wai I heke I ngā take porotiki.
And thank you, whānau, for listening to this episode or watching to see who came out on top and who didn't in politics.